Welcome to Simply Bitcoin. Guys, the world's second largest economy with an $18 trillion GDP might have just started the second leg of Bitcoin's bull market. While everyone's been paying attention to the recent Fed cut and whether or not we're in a recession, we believe that what just happened in China today is far more consequential for Bitcoin. Stay tuned to find out more. But before we jump into the deals, I bring up our panelists. Of course, we have my legendary co-host Optimus Fields and our guest for today, Mark Jeftovic, CEO of EasyDNS and author of the Bitcoin Capitalist newsletter. So let's jump straight to it. So the headline from Reuters is China's broad rate cuts, how investors are reacting. To get into the specifics, China's central bank will cut bank's reserve requirement ratio by 50 basis points and further reduce key interest rates to support a recovery in prices. Pan, speaking at a news conference alongside officials from two other financial regulatory agencies, said that the 7-day repo rate will be cut by 0.2 percentage points to 1.5% and said deposits and other interests will fall as well. Anthony Pompliano came out and said China just confirmed that they will cut interest rates. Cheap capital is going to flood the market from around the world. Asset prices are going to be large beneficiaries. So this seems to be a trend across all central banks worldwide. First, it started in Europe with them lowering interest rates. Then it came to the United States. The Fed news came out about a week or so ago. Of course, the Bitcoin price pumped on that news. And now you have the world's second largest economy also indicating that they are going to be cutting rates as well. And of course, this is heading into the year of the bull market, which is 2025. I think it's going to be absolute fireworks. So I want to start with Mark. Mark, what's your take on this very interesting news coming out of the second largest economy in the world, China?
Hi guys, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Yeah, it's confirmation of something I've been writing in the letter for a few months. Well, most of this year I've been saying the interest rate hike cycle is over. I live in Canada, so the central bank here has been cutting since I think May was the first cut. But more than looking around the world and seeing all these different central banks cutting, of which China is the latest confirmation, and of course the Fed was the big one a week ago. Everyone was waiting for it. Let's look at the outlier. What happened when a central bank went the other direction? I'm speaking, of course, of Japan, that surprised the world by trying to get off zero, hiking to 25 basis points. They were expected to go to 10. The entire world practically imploded. It was the Black Monday, August the 5th. And it just goes to show you that all the central banks of the world took rates as high as they could go. I've always said they were just trying to get as high as they could go so that they could reset and go back lower again. But the China move today is confirmation that liquidity is coming back. Fiat is going to be debased and everything is going to just go back into that cycle that's kind of aligns with the standard 4-year cycle for crypto.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And again, this is coming right before the expected the expected euphoria phase of the Bitcoin bull market entering into 2025. So it seems like all the planets are aligning. You have the European Central Bank, you had the Fed, and now you have the Chinese Central Bank indicating that as well. So yeah, I mean, it seems like absolute fireworks heading into 2025. I think that's the signal. I think that's what everyone has to really be focusing on is, okay, what the Fed did was last week's news. What China's central bank is doing is this week's news. I'm really excited to see what the Bitcoin price is going to do heading into the end of the year. I think we're going to have a very, very bullish end of the year. I think it's going to surprise a whole lot of people. Opti, what's your take on all this?
Well, as Mark was saying, as money printer turns on, obviously that is bullish for Bitcoin. And it really just goes to show there is a lot of, maybe we would say, fiat bulls out there saying everything is good. We all know the corporate press and the official leaders out there are telling us the economy is stronger than ever. Obviously, usually they say that in regards to their own country, but I think this is just more signal and more writing on the wall that the global economy is not in the best place right now. And it's all downstream from money printing and the debasement of fiat currencies. And this is why we're a Bitcoin channel. This is why we tell everyone constantly that the only way to protect yourself is to start saving in Bitcoin, to have some Bitcoin in case things do go haywire. And I think this is more signal on that very note that we talk about here. It's a constant theme we talk about here, is there is no way out of this except for printing more money, injecting more liquidity and capital into the system. The system is running on fumes, and that fumes is just printing more money. And this is where we are right now. We don't like to be doomers here on the show, but this is the position that the world is in. They need to inject more fiat into the system to keep it going. And the only way to really protect yourself is to take things into your own hands and start saving in Bitcoin. So it is very crazy that we're seeing all this stuff play out right now. It's kind of something I've been saying for a while, that we have a perfect storm ahead of us, I think, probably going into 2025. And it is all very bullish for Bitcoin. Not to say that the world has to crumble for Bitcoin to succeed, but hey, more liquidity injected into the market just essentially means that number is going to go up and money printer is going to go burr. And hopefully more people wake up to the problems that we are seeing on the horizon and start to become Bitcoiners. So everything's good for Bitcoin. All roads lead back to Bitcoin.
Absolutely. And I want to get more into the details, right? So, and pass it up to Mark, but Mark, this is more up your alley. Why do asset prices, why do they benefit when central banks cut rates? And the latest news, of course, being China, the second largest economy in the world.
It's basically the denominator is being diluted, right? Every time a central bank cuts rates, or every time they increase the money supply, or every time they pump liquidity into the system, the denominator is like debasing. It's being it's that other word, diluted, but that's not the one I'm looking for. But that's why you see the meme among Bitcoiners, like everything divided by 21 million, because that denominator is not going anywhere. So it means that everything on top, everything in the world, all the assets is going to have that fixed value above that, or is going to have that value above that fixed denominator in the case of Bitcoin. But in a fiat denominator, that's just disintegrating into dust, right? It's just devaluing over time. And so what the pernicious effect that has is that it makes assets, like it blows the nominal value out, but it actually, because it pulls everybody's timeline into the near term, it sort of creates this vicious circle where everyone is trying to outrun this fiat debasement. And that's why you see really low, you see really high time preference, and you see people just going for these short-term gains. It's why Wall Street is obsessed on the next quarter's numbers and predicting next quarter's numbers, where if you have that Bitcoin denominator, you have that low time preference. You're looking at this long range value of assets, and you make a much more conscious decision on how you're going to spend your asset, be it if it's Bitcoin, because that's not degrading in value over time. It's gaining purchasing power over time. So you're going to think about the future value of what you want to exchange it for today versus fiat, where you know that the denominator is going away, and it's going away at an accelerating pace. So it's like, I just need to get rid of this and I have to exchange it for anything that is degrading at a slower rate of value. And of course, the extreme cases are like hyperinflations, and we've seen them throughout history.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, everybody. Well, we're going to have more on the China news during the numbers segment. Also, the Kingdom of Bhutan has 1/3 of its GDP in Bitcoin. Absolutely insane. And of course, we are going to cover a quick update on the continuation of Operation Chokepoint 2.0. Some damning evidence was just released. I would say a smoking gun, how there was a colluded effort by elements of the US government to go after crypto-friendly banks. So quite interesting. So we have a hell of a show lined up for you guys. But first, let's get into numbers. I do want to give a shout out to our lead sponsor. I'm talking about the best place to buy your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack. I'm talking about bitcoinwell.com. Buy real Bitcoin, enable your independence with the fastest and safest way to buy Bitcoin in Canada, in the USA. To get started, all you got to do is you put in your email address, takes 2 to 5 minutes to get verified, and bada bing, bada boom, you're ready to buy automatic self-custody Bitcoin. Automatic self-custody Bitcoin is what makes Bitcoin Well different. They don't even custody your Bitcoin. As soon as your funds clear, when you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address, which perfectly aligns with the Simply Bitcoin ethos of the separation of money and state. By the way, you earn Bitcoin Well points every time you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, and you can use those points towards the Bitcoin Wishing Well contest, which we'll do for you guys right now. Get your Lightning wallets ready. First person to scan the QR code wins the prize for today. The prize for today is 500 sats. Every time you toss a coin into the Bitcoin Wishing Well, you have an opportunity to win up to 1 million Satoshis. If you head over to bitcoinwell.com today and use promo code SimplyBTC, again, SimplyBTC, to sign up, you get 3 tosses into the Bitcoin Wishing Well, absolutely free. Each toss has an opportunity to win up to 1 million Satoshis. What are you waiting for? Go to bitcoinwell.com today. All right, everybody, let's hit the numbers. I'm going to tell you guys about our sponsor, Stampseed. Usually when you buy yourself a hardware wallet, it comes with a piece of paper. It's labeled 1 through 12 or 1 through 24. And what you're meant to do is you're meant to write down your seed words on that piece of paper. The problem is that paper is prone to water damage, fire damage. Your dog could eat that piece of paper. That's not the right way to store your generational wealth. You want to literally, proof of work, stamp your letters, letter by letter, into a plate of titanium. And that's exactly what the Stampseed is going to allow you to do. So it's a titanium seed phrase storage kit. It comes with the hammer. It comes with the letter stamping tools. It comes with the anvil. It comes with everything you need to literally stamp letter by letter your seed into a piece of titanium, which is going to stand the test of time. It's fireproof, it's waterproof. Your dog's probably not going to want to eat a plate of titanium. And this is the proper way to secure your generational wealth. Head over to stampseed.com today to get started and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the stampseed.com store. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is $63,200. Sats per dollar, 1,582 sats per dollar. Block height, 862,685. Blocks to halving, 187,315. Halving estimate, March 28, 2028. Total Lightning Network capacity, 5,077 BTC. Capacity value, $320 million US dollars. Realized monetary inflation, 1.35%. Market capitalization, 1.25 trillion. And Bitcoin versus gold market cap, 6.83%. Anyways, I have a couple of reasons as to why China lowering interest rates will have a positive impact on Bitcoin. So let me pull up those reasons real quick. Here are the 5 reasons. Reason number 1, increased liquidity. When China lowers interest rates, it makes borrowing cheaper for businesses and individuals. This stimulates economic activity, increases liquidity in the financial system. As more money flows into the economy, investors may seek high-yielding or alternative assets, including Bitcoin, which could see an uptick in demand. Also, if you see this in a historical context, from Bitcoin cycles, every single time, a central bank lowers the interest rates, it becomes very, very positive for what are considered risk on assets. Even though I would say that I would call fiat a risk on asset. I would call bonds risk on assets, but that's the way that the market sees it. Anyways, reason number 2, weaker yuan, potential shift to Bitcoin. Lower interest rates can devalue the Chinese yuan relative to other currencies, making Chinese assets less attractive for foreign investors. With concerns over currency devaluation, Chinese investors and savers may look to alternative stores of value such as Bitcoin to hedge against inflation or capital erosion. Reason number 3, increased risk appetite. Again, I don't think Bitcoin is risky. I think if you're not in Bitcoin, you're the one that's taking the risk. It goes on to say lower interest rates often push investors to take on more risk in search of higher returns. I think that point is key. Bitcoin as a higher risk asset could attract more speculative investors looking to profit from its potential price appreciation. Number 4, support for global financial markets. China is a significant player in global trade and finance. When its economy slows down, it could negatively impact global markets. However, if China lowers rates to stimulate its economy, which according to this Reuters article, that's exactly what the Chinese central bank is hoping to do. It can have a positive ripple effect on global markets, fostering a more bullish sentiment. And I can't emphasize that enough. After all, China is the second largest economy in the world with an $18 trillion GDP. And of course, this can lead to increased interest and risk on assets like Bitcoin. Number 5, potential for increased institutional investment. If China lowers interest rates, stimulates global economic growth, institutional investors, including hedge funds and asset managers, may feel more confident in allocating capital towards Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as part of their diversified portfolio. I mean, number 5 is quite interesting because we're seeing this from institutional investors here in the United States, with BlackRock getting into the game, with banks getting into the game. It was announced that Goldman Sachs had a $400 million exposure to the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF. The Wisconsin Pension Fund, the second largest bank in Europe, BNP Paribas, it was discovered that they had exposure to Bitcoin. Wells Fargo and a couple other large banks in the United States. Yesterday's news, BNY Mellon was given an exemption from the SAB 121 to custody Bitcoin. So it seems like all the stars are aligning for institutional players to come in and get exposure to Bitcoin. Ideally, it would be spot Bitcoin in self-custody, but they're going down the ETF route. And it seems like China is signaling the same thing, which I think is incredibly bullish. So if you put all the pieces together, European central banks are lowering interest rates, the U.S. central banks are lowering interest rates, and now China, the final piece. This makes for an explosive potential Q4 2024 and definitely a explosive 2025 that I'm looking forward to. So, Mark, any thoughts, feelings on what we just covered?
Oh, where to start, but the one thing you were talking about were, excuse me, bonds are the new risk-on asset. Right. Which is it brought me back to a memory from like 2009. I was taking like a value investing course at the University of Western Ontario, and it was taught by this illustrious Canadian value guy, George Athanasakos. And I remember we were talking about cost of capital and weighted average cost of capital, and he was telling us about risk-free rates and stuff like that. And I hadn't heard about Bitcoin yet. It'd be a few more years before I did, but he put up his hand and he said, or I put up my hand and I said, what happens if the risk-free instrument isn't risk-free anymore? And he just kind of looked at me like I was, smoking crack or something like that. And then we fast forward to where we are today. And that's exactly what is taking place over this last sort of cycle. This end game for fiat currency is all about the risk-free asset is no longer risk-free. And they even call bonds like return-free risk now because of the interest rate compression and the negative real rates, because of the rate of inflation is exceeding the interest, the coupon on the bond. And so we really have arrived in this bizarro world where, what is the nature of risk? And you mentioned too, it's like we're sort of pivoting from Bitcoin being a risk on to Bitcoin being a risk off. Now that, I saw a comment float by in the chat room saying that that's BS. Bitcoin is still very much viewed by the market as a risk-on asset. And that's somewhat true. It's mostly true. It still is regarded as a risk-on asset by the wider market. But you could say that the adoption of Bitcoin is a slow, incremental realization that Bitcoin is actually a risk-off asset. And so this institutional pile-in into the space, it started right, as sort of the eccentric billionaires from the last cycle, the Elon Musks and the Paul Tudor Jones and guys like that, and they were kind of the outliers and they were the mavericks. Now we're seeing more institutional, more mainstream institution, which was sort of signaled by BlackRock. That's a whole other conversation we can get into. But now I've been saying for a while, we're going to get this 1% mantra, right? Institutionally, pension funds, endowments, family offices. The mantra is going to be allocate at least 1% to Bitcoin. And the reason why that's becoming a mantra is because it is beginning to dawn on this institutional space that the risk is not allocating, right? That's how this starts to change. It's like, what do you mean you don't have 1% into Bitcoin? Because this is going to the old fashioned like number go up game might be this is going to the moon and you're missing out on it. But it's part of that realization that it is now becoming a risk not to own Bitcoin or not to allocate to Bitcoin. Maybe that's FOMO driven now, but I think the story of hyper Bitcoinization over time is the story of people realizing where the risk really is. Is it in fiat or is it in like digital hard assets like Bitcoin?
100%. That's a very, very good point. Opti, you want to chime in before we pivot the conversation to, ladies and gentlemen, we have a nation state. The Kingdom of Bhutan has reached Bitcoin's end. They have 1/3 of their GDP in Bitcoin, of which they mined. They mined this Bitcoin. They didn't get it through coercive means. They didn't take it from someone. They mined this Bitcoin, and currently they're sitting on a stack worth $828 million. So we're going to talk about that real quick. But first, Opti, your thoughts.
Yeah, I just at first want to echo kind of what Mark was saying. I think Bitcoiners have been saying this for a long time. We've been seeing down the road for a long time. Obviously, Bitcoiners are very anti-fiat. If you understand Bitcoin, then you can see a new lens into the traditional financial world, and you do start to see new risk. And most Bitcoiners, I think, would argue that the real risk is being in the fiat system, and Bitcoin is the true risk-free asset out here. Obviously, there's risk of self-custody, personal responsibility, and that like. But Bitcoin, as far as I'm concerned, is the real stable coin. Bitcoin is the safe haven asset, and we've been saying this for a long time. And I think Bitcoiners have been ahead of the curve on a lot of different things around the world, but especially this idea that the fiat system isn't as riskless as you think it is. It might be one of the most risky places to leave your money, though the status quo would argue opposite and say that, no, trust the system. The experts know what they're doing. The suits know what's best for you guys. The banks know what's going on. The 12 people that control the Federal Reserve and their ilk that control all the central banks, they know what they're doing, guys. They can manage the economy. And Bitcoiners look at that and think that they're crazy. And we're like, no, the best place to have your money is in a system that cannot be manipulated. And now we're seeing that the more that they do try to manipulate the traditional financial world, the riskier things are getting and the more out of control the fiat train is getting. And as Lynn Alden's been saying recently, doing the rounds around all the podcasts, there's no stopping this train. And I think we're seeing signs of this with all of the banks in the world cutting interest rates. It looks like the money printer is going to go on. And to bring this down to the layman term, to try to explain this to my mother and my brother and sister out there and friends, it's very simple. The more that they debase your currency, the more that they print money, the more that they expand the money supply, the broker you are going to get if you're holding fiat money. If you're holding paper money, you are going to very slowly but surely get poorer and life is going to get more expensive. And this is why the common trope or the common idea of people that are very wealthy is you want to own assets. And we would argue that Bitcoin is the best asset to hold. It's available to everyone out there. You don't need to go through a middleman. It's completely parallel to the traditional financial system. And you want to hold some of this because the more they manipulate the traditional financial world, the more the wheels fall off of the traditional financial world, the more Bitcoin will benefit, because people need to find alternative assets, because if the whole system's going down, where are you going to store your money? Obviously, if you are really rich, you're going to buy assets, whether that's houses or, yachts or supercars and status symbols and the likes of those. But most people don't have the accessibility to that. And even they will look at the market and be like, wait, maybe we need an alternative asset. And as Bitcoiners, again, being ahead of the curve on this, we're like, it's Bitcoin, guys. It's simply Bitcoin. It's a very simple solution. It seems complicated because it's so simple, because people are so used to financial trickery. They're like, it can't be this simple. And we're like, yes, it's literally this simple. Just start saving in Bitcoin, take it into custody, protect yourselves, and let the system play itself out. Because we know one thing: they're going to continue to manipulate the system. They're going to continue to inject capital. They're going to continue to debase the currency, expand the currency supply, and inflation's never going to go back into the bag. It's here with us most likely forever, unless you get on the Bitcoin standard and you're able to protect yourself and get on the lifeboat.
100%. All right, everybody, before we pivot the conversation to the Kingdom of Bhutan, we have a very special clip for you guys. Make sure to smash that like button. Help us break 100 likes within the first 30 minutes of the show. I think we're at like 92 right now. And also shout out to the 1,000 people of you guys watching live between all the platforms: YouTube, Rumble, X, and of course Nostr. We got about 25 of you guys watching on Nostr, and we already had 1,000 sats zapped to us, Opti. So shout out to the Nostr fan base. We appreciate you guys, and we're going to continue supporting protocols. Anyways, so I do want to get to the Kingdom of Bhutan news. When I first heard about this, it absolutely blew my mind. I actually made an AI image using Grok last night that I think I felt artistic. I felt motivated. I felt, I was like, wow, this is insane. This is amazing. And like, it is so crazy to me that we have a nation state, we have a country that has allocated 1/3 of its GDP in Bitcoin. The Kingdom of Bhutan is a small Buddhist kingdom in the Himalayas that has a tremendous amount of hydroelectric capability. And what they've realized is they can't use all that electricity for themselves. What they were doing before is they were selling that electricity to neighboring countries. The problem is that when you transport electricity over long distances, it loses its efficiency every mile. So that energy just evaporates, right? Essentially. I'm sure that's not the correct technical term, but still, that's basically what happens. It loses its efficiency every mile of cable. So the most effective way to use electricity is at the source of where you produce it. And that's what the Kingdom of Bhutan has figured out. And they've mined a lot of Bitcoin. They teamed up with the public company Bitdeer. Here's the official article that we covered. And I love the way it's framed. The government of Bhutan is currently holding $828 million worth of Bitcoin. Unlike most governments, Bhutan's BTC does not come from law enforcement asset seizures, but from Bitcoin mining operations, which have ramped up dramatically since early 2023. That's absolutely bullish. Here's a clip of the legacy media talking about it. Let's check it out.
Bhutan, the Himalayan kingdom known for prioritizing happiness over wealth, has quietly emerged as a major player in the cryptocurrency world. With $780 million worth of Bitcoin, which is nearly a third of its GDP, Bhutan has become the fourth largest government holder of Bitcoin. Now, what's fueling the country's ambitions to become a leader in green crypto mining? Here's our report with answers.
Nestled in the Himalayas, Bhutan, a tiny Buddhist kingdom with fewer than 900,000 people, has emerged as an unexpected yet powerful player in the world of cryptocurrency. Known for its serene landscapes, happiness-centric philosophy, and commitment to sustainability, Bhutan has quietly amassed a significant treasure. Over 13,000 Bitcoin, worth approximately $780 million. For a country with a GDP of just under $3 billion, this is a staggering sum, making Bhutan the fourth largest government holder of Bitcoin globally. The Himalayan kingdom is only behind the United States, China, and the United Kingdom as it overtook El Salvador, Ukraine, and Germany. Unlike the United States and China, which gained their cryptocurrency through seizures and legal battles, Bhutan took a more proactive approach by investing directly in Bitcoin mining. And the nation's journey into the digital asset world has been led by its state-owned investment arm, Druk Holdings. Now, even though Bitcoin, the world's first decentralized digital currency, was created in 2009, it has since evolved from a fringe internet experiment into a globally recognized financial asset.
So I'm going to stop it right there. And I just want to play this first part because I think it is synergistic. And I know that Opti picked it up because his name, after all, is Optimus Fields. But check this out, guys. See if you pay attention to this.
Bhutan, the Himalayan kingdom known for prioritizing happiness over wealth.
Exactly. This is what we've been talking about. What happens when you switch from a fiat standard to a Bitcoin standard? It becomes synergistic. Do I believe, it's like this Himalayan kingdom that puts happiness over wealth. With Bitcoin, it's one and the same, right? It is one and the same. It's fiat that has this negative connotation to it. Look, when I'm sure you've been in the dinner table or something like that, right? And your parents say, or your grandparents is like, don't talk about money here. Does that apply to Bitcoin when you talk about Bitcoin? No, talking about Bitcoin makes you happy, right? It gives you hope, right? It's talking, they're talking about fiat, whether they're unconscious of it or conscious of it. That's what they're referring to when they say don't bring up money and don't bring up money on the dinner table, right? So like, I just find that part so poetic. And again, I want to toot my own horn and give myself artistic credit for the image I created yesterday. I'm going to put it on to Opti. Opti, has the kingdom of Bhutan reached Bitcoin's end?
I would argue yes. I mean, from that clip, it sounds like they have leapfrogged all of the trials and tribulations, and they are in Bitcoin Zen right now, which I don't think there's no irony lost on me in the fact that they are in the Himalayas. So of course they get Bitcoin Zen inherently, but I think what really sticks out to me is I know Bitcoiners are very big on game theory and always thinking about attack vectors, but as we've been kind of playing this out, and I know a lot of people are very, maybe I would argue, frustrated with BlackRock coming into Bitcoin and very concerned about all the stuff BlackRock is doing. Yesterday, we did see, or rather we heard some credible rumors from Eric Balchunas. So he's a Bloomberg ETF analyst, basically saying that BlackRock's out there running their own nodes and stuff. And that's why we got that news yesterday about Coinbase and BlackRock, redoing their what was the headline? Amending their custody policy. I forget what the headline was yesterday, but it just goes to show, and I think the Kingdom of Bhutan is a perfect example of this, and it reminds me of the Satoshi quote that honest actors are incentivized to just participate on the network honestly, and they will succeed. And we're seeing Bhutan do this exactly. Like, they were mining quietly for a long time. They've leapfrogged El Salvador. Maybe Bhutan, the King of Bhutan, has now officially become the Bitcoin country of the world. Obviously,
the Bitcoin Kingdom.
The Bitcoin Kingdom. There we go.
The Bitcoin Kingdom.
Obviously, Bukele will always be number one in the history books in regards to embracing Bitcoin, but it does go to show that you are more incentivized to just participate honestly in the Bitcoin network, whether that is saving in Bitcoin or mining Bitcoin, using your excess energy to mine Bitcoin, and you will profit, which is a stark contrast to what we see in the fiat world, where you just perpetually get yourself in debt, essentially steal value from future generations to continue keeping this fiat system going. And here's a little Kingdom of Bhutan out there just stacking sats, mining Bitcoin.
Bro, they've
full
reached
Bitcoin Zen, just like chilling.
That we prioritize happiness over wealth.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I caught that the first time you played it. I'm glad you replayed it. But the real signal here is also, remember how we heard about the Kingdom of Bhutan was mining Bitcoin. It was through the bankruptcy, I believe it was Celsius, if I remember correctly.
They didn't want to make it public.
Yeah, they
was
literally
uncovered.
would have never made it public. And that just goes to show, like, who else out there is doing the same exact thing, and we just don't know who's doing it. And again, there's just so many factors playing into why I think 2025 is going to be an incredible leg up of this next bull run. I think we're going to see a lot of countries come out doing something similar. We're going to see a lot of big corporations come out doing something similar. We're going to see a lot of rich individuals come out doing something similar. And it really just goes to show that Bitcoin as an asset, as a, global money has matured, and we're entering into a new epoch, a new paradigm where Bitcoin is accepted as something that you want to hold, and it's not just internet nerd money. So absolutely incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw a comment by Senior Gringo Papi.
He calls us dorks. So it's a term of endearment.
Anyways, Mark, 2 minutes before we move on to the next segment. What is your thoughts, real quick, on the Kingdom of Bhutan becoming the 4th largest Bitcoin nation state holder in the world?
Well, we should start spelling Bhutan and Buddhist with the Bitcoin B starters. But I remember reporting on this in the newsletter like a year ago that they had started mining, or they were already mining. So it's fantastic to see that they now have such a stash. And you see these relatively tiny countries, Bhutan and El Salvador. You had Trump at the Nashville conference talking about Bitcoin as a strategic reserve for the United States, which would be huge if it happens and he follows through with it. But here's this country over here that people don't really think a lot about. They're already up and running. They've already done it. It's a third of their GDP. El Salvador made it legal tender, years ago by now. I mean, on a micro scale, it's the same thing that I did with my own business. Like EasyDNS was the first domain registrar to take Bitcoin in 2013. We've been stacking it ever since. And now 100% of our retained earnings are in Bitcoin. So I did see one comment go by saying, what do you mean 100? You're not 100% in Bitcoin. So Bhutan's like a third of their GDP. We're 100% of retained earnings in Bitcoin. And that's just all the same thing. It's just really, we've never taken on VC. We've never had to play that hot money game, but we've been stacking sats, and that's what gives us our financial bedrock.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
Hey, wait, Nico, before we move on, though, I love how Mark just said it, the hot money game. That's a really good meme that we should definitely keep spreading that, because people don't understand that that's the game. It's like hot potato, but with fiat money, the hot money game. That's really good.
It's, and I'm so glad that you bring up that, because we're a Bitcoin media. I hate to use the word startup because, again, we're bootstrapping it just like you, Mark, and we're just building up that treasury, and we're not taking any outside investors. But it's awesome because, again, you put some of those profits into the treasury, and your runway just keeps continuing to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then there is no necessity to kind of raise money if you don't want to, right? Which is it kind of changes the whole dynamic of it. And I would say it's definitely a huge net positive for business owners, because again, your treasuries continue to grow.
I'll tell you one quick thing before we shift. So we're 26 years old this year, and
congratulations. That's a huge feat.
It's that time, the private equity guys have been kind of coming out of the woodwork for years, and strategics and stuff. And they talk to us about, and nothing ever compelling has ever come up. But the phrase I keep hearing over and over again is you have a good do nothing strategy, which is I don't have to do anything. I don't have to raise money. It's we just keep stacking. We have a good do nothing strategy, which is a enviable position to be in.
Yeah, I love that. And
also, just doubling down before we go, Nick, also one of the hardest things to do is the classic meme. The way to get rich is just do nothing. Don't outsmart yourself. Bitcoin. And yeah, exactly. And the updated strategy is literally just save in Bitcoin, make sure your cash flow is going up, make sure you're running a profitable business, save in Bitcoin, and literally sit on your hands and do nothing. It's a lot harder than it sounds, but it's a really simple strategy.
Absolutely. It's a cheat code. All right, everybody, before we move on to the next segment, stay tuned, because again, we uncovered, I would say, a smoking gun, Elizabeth Warren colluding with elements of the government to take down Silvergate Bank. some damning evidence was uncovered by Nick Carter, which Opti covered on Friday's episode, but we have Caitlin Long's comments on it. So stay tuned for the news segment. We still have a lot of content left up. And of course, we're going to talk to Mark later on in the show about EasyDNS. And of course, he is the author of the Bitcoin Capitalist newsletter. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Very special shout out to our sponsor, Compass Mining. They make Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone, from beginners to experienced investors. Their turnkey miners gets you online and hashing within 48 hours, making it easier than ever to start your mining journey. Plus, with their active marketplace, you can resell your miner at any time, adding flexibility and value to your investment. Visit their website to access a wealth of resources, learning everything you need to know about Bitcoin mining. Take your first step into the world of Bitcoin mining with confidence. Discover more at compassmining.io. Again, compassmining.io, and see how Compass Mining can power your success. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Foundation. It's self-custody done right. They built a premium grade hardware wallet called Passport right here in the US, and it integrates seamlessly with their free app called Envoy. Passport is fully open source and verifiable. It's the most intuitive Bitcoin wallet designed with a UX reminiscent of a classic feature phone, so you'll know how to navigate it and use it the moment you pick it up. It's also air-gapped, meaning Bitcoin stays offline, never touching an internet connection. It's Bitcoin only, open source verifiable, air-gap security model, gorgeous design craft, premium grade materials. Get your Bitcoin off exchanges and into your own hands in just a few minutes with Passport at foundation.xyz/simply. Get peace of mind for your piece of Bitcoin.
All right, welcome back. You can scan the QR code right now on your screen. It will take you directly to the Foundation Devices website. Opti is going to model off the device right now. If you use promo code SIMPLY, you won't get Opti, but you will get a discount to the Passport by Foundation Devices hardware wallet. Again, it's Bitcoin only, it's open source, it's incredibly easy to use with the Envoy app, and you can use promo code SIMPLY to get yourself a discount. Remember, guys, not your keys, not your cheese. Self-custody is the revolution. Check the link in the video description or scan the QR code. Anyways, guys, we've been covering this for like a year now. Operation Chokepoint 2.0. And I got to give credit where credit is due. Nick Carter, you know what? I'll give us credit a little bit. I'll pat ourselves in the back a little bit. We aren't as articulate as Nick when it comes to writing down all the evidence. But if you guys have been tuning into Simply Bitcoin, we have literally piece by piece have been pointing out all the things that have been done to go after the industry. At first, we were on the fence about it. We're like, there's no way. But then it started to escalate. The Tornado Cash arrests, setting the precedent, the Coin Center lawsuit being lost, that set the precedent. As soon as that precedent was set, within a month, the Samurai wallet developers were arrested. The attack on self-custody, the attack on Bitcoin mining, the proposed 30% Bitcoin mining tax, right? So all of these things started to come up, and you're like, wait a second, there might be something going on here behind the hood. I think the moment has come where we have found the smoking gun. I mean, the smoking gun. By the way, shout out to everyone on ZapDop's stream continuing to zap us. Really, really appreciate it. I don't know if you guys know this, but in 10 years, you probably have sent us over $3,000 so far. We appreciate it. Thank you.
No, generational wealth, bro.
Appreciate it. Anyways, okay. So Opti covered this original thread by Nick Carter, and Nick does an incredible job just going through it and being extremely thorough about all the things that have happened. But I want to talk about Caitlin Long. Caitlin Long has come on Simply Bitcoin IRL, and I remember asking her because she is launching a crypto only bank that is fully reserved, based out of Wyoming because of Wyoming's favorable regulations and laws. However, what's stopping her is her ability to get a federal banking charter, which would make her competitive with other banks. And I remember asking her, I'm like, Caitlin, like, why do you think you haven't got it? And she told me verbatim, her words, not mine. She says, I believe these words came directly from the White House. And this was, like I would say like a year ago, but we had suspicions at that point, but we never knew for certain. Now a couple months later, a couple months have happened, and we now know that Elizabeth Warren has done many malicious things, including writing that article with the Wall Street Journal, basically claiming that Bitcoin was being used to raise money for terrorism. And it was like she blew it out of proportion, the percentage of money that was being raised and what percentage of that money was Bitcoin. It was discovered after the fact in a testimony between Tom Emmer and the head of I believe the institution is the FDIC. But anyways, Tom Emmer got the head of that institution, which Elizabeth Warren was citing, it was the FinCEN, to admit that the vast majority of terrorist financing is actually coming from the traditional system. But Elizabeth Warren would like you to believe that that's not the case. Elizabeth Warren would like you to believe that it's Bitcoin that's being used to launder all this money, which came out. The head of the FinCEN even admitted that that wasn't the case. They actually preferred the traditional system. So it's all these attacks coming from different attack vectors. And again, she's not hiding this. She's making it very apparent. She's actually made it part of her electoral campaign when she's basically saying things like along the lines of, yes, we're building an anti-crypto army type of thing. So anyways, this is one of the latest things that was uncovered. I consider this a smoking gun in terms of collusion. And again, I would say that this is a purposeful misrepresentation of the facts to make the industry look bad. This was essentially a hit job conducted on a crypto-friendly bank. And by the way, this happened not too long ago when the Fed, and I think it was the FDIC, both took enforcement action against Customers Bank, which again happens to be one of the last friendly crypto remaining banks in the United States. So, the Operation Chokepoint 2.0 is alive and well. It has not gone away despite the change in rhetoric coming from certain political candidates. Just want to say that. Anyways, here's Caitlin Long. Bombshell revelation that Silvergate was liquid and solvent when the Fed forced it to close changes everything when analyzed the March 2023 bank failures. Look at the dates. March 8th, Silvergate voluntarily liquidates. March 10th, Silicon Valley fails. March 12th, Signature fails. Here's the highlighted part of the passage. However, the increased supervisory pressure on Silvergate and the other bank focused on servicing crypto asset businesses forced Silvergate to a point where it would have needed to remake its business model away from its focus on crypto asset business. By the way, again, this just happened with Customers Bank recently, where the Fed essentially wanted to be the determining factor on which banks are allowed to provide services to Bitcoin and crypto and which banks are not allowed to provide services to Bitcoin and crypto. And if you break it down, like first principles for a second, Opti, could you make me full screen? Think about that. The incumbent player that has everything to lose if Bitcoin succeeds wants to be the regulator that gets to decide what banks are allowed to bank the Bitcoin and crypto industry and what banks are not allowed to bank the Bitcoin and crypto industry. Does that sound fair to you? I also want to add that the Federal Reserve is not a democratic institution. The chairman is appointed. He is not elected. So where is the accountability there? I'll leave that up to you guys. I just feel like they're not playing fair. That's just, it's a hunch. It's a hunch. Anyways, it goes on to say, however, they increase. So you guys get the point on there. Number 2, stop and think about that timeline. Think, would Silicon Valley Bank have failed had Silvergate not been forced by the Fed to close just 2 days earlier? Recall the bank run on Silicon Valley really got started on March 9th, the day after Silvergate announced it would liquidate. Number 3, reminder, Silvergate cost the FDIC deposit insurance fund nothing, but the subsequent bank failures cost the FDIC's dearly. Silicon cost $20 billion, Signature cost it $2.4 billion. And First Republic cost it $15.6 billion. Oh, and regarding the latter, JP Morgan bought First Republic and its stock price went up 4% on that news, by roughly the same amount as First Republic cost the FDIC, roughly a dollar for dollar value transfer from the FDIC to JP Morgan shareholders. The big got bigger. But zoom out. Would any of the above have happened had the Fed not done to Silvergate what it did just days before? Who at the Fed did this to Silvergate? Who at the Fed is responsible for Operation Chokepoint 2.0? Below is Nick Carter's February 2023 list from his Pirate Wires post. The Fed names Michael Barr and Michael Gibson. So check this out. The architects of Operation Chokepoint 2.0. Of course, we have Gary Gensler. We have in the Treasury, Neil Liang. We have, by the way, this is someone, for your guys' information, Bharat Ramaruti, I'm sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly, that Kamala Harris wants to make part of her administration. Just want to make that clear for everyone. FDIC, we have Martin Grunberg. And of course, we have our favorite anti-Bitcoin senator, Elizabeth Warren. We have Michael Barr and Michael Gibson, right? So these apparently are all the people involved in Operation Chokepoint 2.0. And Caitlin Long ends with will history be kind to the mess they unleashed? So, Nick Carter, again, I highly recommend checking this entire thread, which Opti covered on Friday's episode. It goes more into the details. But again, now we know for a fact that, there was collusion, that there was basically a hit job on these crypto-friendly banks that continue because Customers Bank just got hit with an enforcement action, and that was reported by the Winklevi twins. Anyways, here's Ryan Selkis. I can't read some part of this tweet, but I'll read the parts that are YouTube friendly. He goes on to say, sworn affidavits now confirm that Nick, I, and others were screaming about 18 months ago. Liz Warren coordinated an extrajudicial hit on a private bank to hurt an industry that embarrassed her because she worked with SBF's father. So I'll leave it at that. Anyways, gentlemen, I want to open it up to the panel for discussion. This is pretty crazy. Is it the role of government to shut down certain banks because they choose to offer services to an industry that could potentially threaten their monopoly and control over money? I think the question is not what is money. I think the question is what is government, right? Because right now I'm a little bit confused. Is this what the role of government? And you can't look at me with the straight face and tell me, oh, this is for your protection, right? Because again, you saw how the stock price of JP Morgan went up. Once again, I'm seeing, Main Street bail out Wall Street. That's what I just saw there. And of course, the collateral damage was a Bitcoin / crypto friendly bank that could potentially threaten the Federal Reserve's monopoly on money. And of course, the traditional banks, of which Jamie Dimon is the head of, get richer in the process, right? So it's like everyone kind of, the insiders all benefit at the expense of the potential disruptive players, which I find, not surprising whatsoever. It's a little bit poetic. Why can't we all be like the Kingdom of Bhutan that values happiness over money? This is some fiat shenanigans. And again, I can't get over the collusion between the federal government, some of the US's largest banks, in order to shut down a Bitcoin / crypto friendly bank. I can't get over that. Is that the role of government? Should government be able to do that in the first place? That's not the free market. That's not capitalism. That's crony capitalism at best. And that's, I can't even say those words on YouTube, but you guys get the point. Anyways, I'm going to pass it on to Mark and then Opti's take on this.
It's not just a sign of government. It's technocracy in general. It's this idea that these wizened experts that are in many cases unelected and appointed can control reality, or sort of pick and choose winners and losers and manage outcomes. And what they usually end up doing is creating chaos in their wake. So Silvergate, so the Bitcoin capitalist, we have a stock portfolio. Silvergate was in it. We reported on Silvergate every month. So we knew it was a healthy bank. It was like, this was actually a great company. They were doing well. They were managing the crypto winter. They were really playing all their cards right. So when they were like shut down, it just astounded us. It's the only zero in the history of our portfolio. And then what happened? They set off this regional banking crisis because you got these technocrats deciding that, okay, this bank is good, this bank is bad. It sends a ripple, a shockwave through the entire system. And so suddenly you've got this regional banking crisis. Silicon Valley starts to panic, and that just starts cascading through the system. And the Fed ended up having to backstop like the entire deposit base of the United States instead of just the FDIC insured. Was it intentional? I guess we don't know for sure, like if this was just all collusion, or was it just technocratic mismanagement spiraling out of control into a contagion that was then a case of never let a good crisis go to waste. And it made me think of, as you were reciting this entire chain of events, I'm in Canada. You know, we had the government here seize bank accounts during the Freedom Convoy. And what happened in Canada a few days after that happened? All four of the big Canadian banks went off the air one night. Like they just, like, behind the scenes, it wasn't really heavily reported on. You could catch it on Zero Hedge and places like that. All of the major banking online bank platforms went dark after this happened because there was chaos happening behind the scenes. And so then, you know, about a week later, they come out, they say mission accomplished. They declared victory and ended the state of emergency. But what they were really doing behind the scenes was crashing the economy and causing a bank run to start bubbling up under the hood in Canada. So that's what happens when the government decides to pick and choose winners and losers among, you know, the financial people, among banks, among bank depositors, is you just, you know, this whole fiat system is held together with spit, twist ties, and faith. And if you start messing with the faith part, the whole system comes unglued faster than anyone can talk.
Beautiful. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. You got about 2 minutes before we move on to the next segment. What are your thoughts on this, my friend?
Yeah, I mean, I basically laid out my thoughts on Friday in regards to this. We've been covering this for a long time on the show, and it just further proof that, of course, the system is rigged, and of course, the system or the players that have the most to lose are obviously going to do whatever they can to try to stop Bitcoin adoption. They're obviously playing dirty out there, and they're picking winners and losers, and so I find it funny that, like Mark just said, the system right now relies on a lot of trust. And to me, I'm always amazed that people still trust the system as legitimate. Whereas when you can view the world through the Bitcoin lens, you start to realize that things aren't exactly as they seem. There's mass deceptions being played out. You know, it's the art of war out here in regards to banking and politics. And deception is one of their big tools. They're like main tool in their tool belt. And this is what we're seeing play out. We've been covering this for a long time. At first, we were kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt. I was probably a little more of an extremist when it came to this point, and I was like, no, this is a very obvious hit. This is them trying to attack Bitcoin. We've been saying for a long time that we are in the then they fight you stage, and they're not going to outright attack Bitcoin yet, but they are working behind the scenes to try to stop Bitcoin. And I really love that we are using the phrase phrasing of they put out a hit on the Bitcoin industry, because it kind of goes into something I've been saying for a while, that it seems like there's a cabal, or maybe some might call it a mafia, that is in control of the central banks and the government and the corporate press. And here we are, they're literally using the same type of tactics to stop something that's going to benefit the people, which really just goes to show that those in power, the people that are supposedly working for the people, are completely unhinged, detached from reality, and they're essentially doing what they did at the end of the Roman Empire. They're trying to rob the coffers as quickly as possible and get away with it. But I think slowly but surely the trust and the faith in the system is crumbling, and people are waking up and they're looking at this and wondering, like, what is going on? Why is this the system we're using? Why am I being forced to use a money that not only they can control, but I lose value in constantly? Is there an alternative? Of course, that road will eventually lead them to Bitcoin. So, hey, man, we knew this was happening.
Amen. Amen. All right, everybody, stay tuned, because we're going to talk to Mark Jeftovic. Oh, I got it right. CEO of EasyDNS and author of The Bitcoin Capitalist during the Daily Culture. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor. Of course, I'm talking about the Orange Pill app. Stack friends who stack sats join the 12,233 Bitcoiners that are currently on the Orange Pill app. The Orange Pill app is the #1 Bitcoin resource for Bitcoin only events. And of course, if you're on the go, you're traveling, you go to a conference, for example, and you stay in that city for a week, and let's say the conference is only 2 days. What are you going to do all those other days? The Orange Pill app is for you. Has a really clever geographical feature. So it'll literally show you the Bitcoiners that are near you, and it allows you to send them a message directly connecting with them. It's also one of the best ways to reach me. I don't really answer random Twitter DMs or emails these days. So if you want to send me a message via the Orange Pill app. Download it today, scan the QR code, or check the link in the video/podcast description. Anyways, pivoting the conversation, we have a very special guest today. We have Mark Jeftovic. Mark, I do want to talk about, you were one of the first DNS companies. You're the CEO of EasyDNS to accept Bitcoin. You've been in business for 26 years. What made you take that bold step? Because now it's obvious. It's like, oh, of course you accept Bitcoin. That's so easy, but back in the day, being one of the pioneers to first do that, you could have made an argument that it could have potentially hurt your business in a way. Obviously, in hindsight, I think you made a genius decision. But what were some of the reasons as to why you wanted to accept Bitcoin as a means of payment for your business?
It was an easy decision at the time, because years earlier, if you rewind another 10 years, there was a period that there was this era of digital gold currencies, right? E-gold, PC Unix, gold money, which is still around today, but it's more of a savings thing than a payment thing. And we were the first registrar then to take e-gold. And so we were taking e-gold as payment, and we were redeeming it out. So we have physical gold, which we still have to this day, on our balance sheet. We're probably the only tech company in the world with Bitcoin and gold on the balance sheet. But e-gold didn't make it. The digital gold currencies didn't make it. They were maybe too early. They had governance issues. They were too centralized. So to my regret, I missed Bitcoin for the first few years. But when I finally came across it, it was 2013, and it was instant pattern recognition for me. I thought, where e-gold didn't succeed the first time, this time this might work. This one might work this time. So right away, I was just sort of getting to know the place, getting to know the terrain. I started sponsoring Let's Talk Bitcoin, and I still keep in touch with some of them to this day. And I'd say within a couple of months, we were taking Bitcoin as a payment method, and then that was it. Like, I just did that and did nothing else. And then as each cycle progressed, I just started getting more and more involved. And it wasn't really until, I'd say, maybe the 2017 cycle that I really began to have like understanding that this is not going away. Crypto is not going away. For the first few years, it was like, yeah, it could make it. It might not make it. It's too early to tell. By 2017 or so, it's like, no, it's not going away. And now it's like, my opinion has changed from, I used to think of Bitcoin as something, a German phrase called Notgeld. And if you've heard me talk about it before, sorry, but it was like emergency money. Every hyperinflation has an emergency money. In Germany, cities printed their own script, and in Zimbabwe, they used like prepaid phone cards and gas cards. And I thought Bitcoin was like a global Notgeld. And even that changed in 2022 after Trudeau started seizing the bank accounts. I was like, this is now going to be part of the future of money. This is now no longer Notgeld. This is going to be part of the next monetary regime, whatever it is. So that's how my view of it evolved over those cycles. But at the time in 2013, like I said, it was pattern recognition, and it was just a no-brainer at the time.
Absolutely. So, and you're also a very successful entrepreneur. If you've been in business for since 1998, and of course, if you've been accepting Bitcoin since 2013, you could surmise that. Now, my question to you is, what motivates you to write the newsletter, The Bitcoin Capitalist, right? Because, you know, obviously from a financial standpoint, of course, I'm assuming you're very successful. You have a successful company, you have a successful business. It's not easy to stay, as a business owner myself, it's not easy to stay in business for 26 years. So what motivates you to write something in relation to Bitcoin? Like, you take the time, you know, out of your day to write the Bitcoin Capitalist newsletter?
Started under lockdowns, and I was, you know, kind of going through lockdown psychosis, and I had to do something to stay sane. I think every entrepreneur started at least one other business under lockdowns. And I wasn't intending to be Bitcoin. I just thought I was going to just hone my craft of investing. I've always, you know, thought of myself more of an investor than an entrepreneur. And I thought I would focus on nano caps because I thought that's where I could get the alpha compared to the big boys. So I would just start researching these little penny stocks and micro caps. And I'm a value investor sort of by training. And so I kept finding value in the same place. I would find these little penny stock companies, tiny Bitcoin and crypto companies that were that had more Bitcoin on their balance sheet than they were trading as their market cap. Like Fortress Technologies was one, which is now Cathedra Bitcoin. You know, Hut was so cheap back then, and Bitfarms. So I started writing these reports, and I just kept coming back. I could only find this value in this one place because crypto is at all-time highs. These stocks are trading in the toilet. There was this massive asymmetry. And so that's what I did. And that kind of became, it was called The Crypto Capitalist at the beginning because I thought it was a neat play on, you know, you were incurring career risk by admitting you were a capitalist. Because the world was enamored with collectivism, still is. And then because crypto itself took on sort of rough connotations during the crypto winter, I changed it to The Bitcoin Capitalist about a year and a half ago.
Awesome, man. It's crazy. You know, at least there was a silver lining. Oh, sorry about that. My camera went down. At least there was a silver lining with the lockdowns, right? I think there was a lot of silver lining with the lockdowns. I think it woke up a lot of people to what's going on in the world. But we got a question in the chat. Someone is asking who the painting of the fallen prince is behind you, Mark.
Oh, that's Alan Greenspan. So these were done during the global financial crisis by an artist named Jeffrey Raymond. And so he painted these while the government was bailing out these big banksters, and he put the originals out front of like Wall Street. And then you can't really tell from the camera, but these are covered in graffiti, right? So he just let people on the street walk by and just write their thoughts on these paintings. So those are prints of those. And so that's Lloyd Blankfein, of course, that guy, and that's Alan Greenspan.
I love it. I love it. And very, very poetic. I love it. You're a Bitcoiner at heart. Anyways, I do want to talk about your business. And then I got one more question for you. We already got fans of your business in the chat. Tora Pottle says EasyDNS is legit 100%. So what is EasyDNS? What services does it provide? And of course, now we know you can pay in Bitcoin for those services.
Yeah, so we are like a domain registrar, DNS provider, web host, managed WordPress, and we do VPS hosting and email now. And why it matters to this industry is crypto companies, Bitcoin companies specifically, you have risk from two sides. And some of the other registrars out there, you're incurring a risk just by being with them. I'm not going to name names. We're in the lobby of big tech right now on YouTube, so we can't sort of spill the punch bowl. But some places, if you're a crypto company and you're with a certain registrar, you're going to get targeted because people know that they can game those companies into letting you hijack their account and change the name servers and take over the domain, even for a few hours. That can be catastrophic. And the registrar itself sometimes has animosity towards the space. So suddenly, a crypto company or an exchange or some platform suddenly finds their domain suspended because it violates some nebulous community standards. We love the whole space. We're Bitcoin primacy, but we're friendly to the entire crypto space. We got involved in Ethereum name service just because they were down the road first with decentralized naming. I have my criticisms of Ethereum and that whole move from proof of work to proof of stake. But the point is we're a naming company. So we look everywhere where we see this innovation in naming and decentralized DNS, which hasn't really happened on Bitcoin yet. And I'm kind of waiting, and maybe we got to push a bit, but it will happen. There's things like stacks and .btc and side chains like that. So, we're just, we take care of the risk on both sides of the equation, from hackers setting up fake websites that are targeting your exchange to registrars that just don't understand your business model. We do understand it because we live and breathe it.
Awesome. Yeah, you guys go check out, let me get the URL correct. EasyDNS.com. They accept Bitcoin. And if you're looking for hosting a website, like I said, it seems like Mark has your back covered, and he is familiar with the types of attacks that you potentially might incur, not to mention the fact that you're not hosting your website with one of the big tech platforms.
Anyways, sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
We'll make a coupon code. It's not going to be live until a few minutes after the show. I'll tell the guys to do it. Simply Bitcoin, 21% off your initial purchase, whatever you want in there. So Simply Bitcoin, all one word. We'll get that live within the hour.
Awesome. So what I'll do, ladies and gentlemen, is I'll put that in the YouTube description. Opti, you'll put that in the podcast description, and you guys could use that promo code for EasyDNS.com, and it'll get you 21% off anything on their website. Anyways, I usually, Mark, what we ask our guests towards the end is we ask them to leave a last bit of news for last say for our audience. There's currently, just to kind of give you an idea, 1,500 people watching live between YouTube and X, and maybe 100 or so on Rumble, and another 10 or so on Nostr. So any final parting thoughts for everybody who's watching?
Everything is proceeding on schedule. Every time I see major shifts in this industry that some people think may be signs of co-option, like BlackRock, opening up the floodgates with an ETF, I don't look at it as someone's trying to co-opt Bitcoin. I mean, surely they probably will. I look at it as Bitcoin wins. Bitcoin is almost preordained to win. And when someone like Larry Fink changes his mind and says, okay, we have to go from hating this space to embracing this space, it's because he got his behavior forced, which is what he likes to famously say he does to other people. And that's happening across the world. You know, you have Trump saying, you know, becoming completely orange pilled aside from that other thing, you know, that other crypto he's doing. He's still talking a good game for Bitcoin with the strategic asset reserve. Even the Dems are pivoting on crypto and Bitcoin because they just see which way the wind is blowing. And this is the great opt-out. Bitcoin is a short on clown world. That's my shorthand on it, right? It's just the way, I can't say it on YouTube, but it's like bleep it all, right? I'm stacking sats. There's not a damn thing anybody can do about it. And like you said, this train is not stopping.
Love it. Love it.
Hold on.
Guys, this was Simply Bitcoin Live for September 24th, 2024. I'm your host, Nikos, my co-host, Optimus Fields, and our guest for today, Mark Jeftovic, the CEO of EasyDNS. Again, you guys could use promo code SimplyBitcoin to get 21% off anything on the EasyDNS website, and he is the author of the Bitcoin Capitalist newsletter, so go check that out, subscribe. Anyways, guys, we love you all. If you guys enjoyed the show, smash the like button. If you feel like we provided you value, consider subscribing, and shout out to the over 2,000 sats that were zapped to us during the live stream on Nostr. You guys, again, you guys could find us on your favorite audio platform. We're everywhere. YouTube, Rumble, X, Nostr, everywhere. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you can find us, we'll be there. Guys, we love you all. We'll see you tomorrow for a brand new episode of Simply Bitcoin Live. And of course, stay tuned for Dante's Bitcoin Simply dropping later on in the day. Take care, everybody.
Was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.